guys, I hope you're all well. Now today's video is a super different one than I've really done before. I've spoken about some of these topics in videos before, like Q&As and stuff and tips and tricks videos, but never its whole like dedicated video. And this is kind of going to be my tips on responding to situations at camp. Now I don't know how's best to word that as a title, like what actually makes it sound like a video that you guys would want to watch. But this basically means is just like situations that you might come across in a camp setting that might seem quite tricky and overwhelming at times, and kind of how best to respond based on my experience responding to these situations. So this could be things like if you've got a kid that's really homesick, or keeping the energy levels high in the bunk, or if you've got a kid that doesn't want to like eat or drink, or someone that's not sleeping well, like how do you respond to those situations, and like kind of how you can make that like the easiest situation for you as well. Now I want to say a big disclaimer, like every camper will be completely different. Now what I say has worked for me in terms of one camper might not work for the next. Like even in my bunk, like something that I use as a technique to help a kid that's feeling homesick could be the complete opposite for what helps the kid that sleeps next to them. Do you know what I mean? Like it can be so different. So I want you to bear that in mind, that these tips that I'm saying I've used have worked for me, but you have to be really adaptable in these situations, and something might not work. Like some kid might be quite shy and not want to actually have like a really deep conversation with you about things, and some kid might really open up and want to tell you everything. Like it really depends on the kid, and you're going to have to bear that in mind and kind of go with the flow. But that's what's so fun about the summer, is just going with it and just seeing how it goes, and just being adaptable and flexible and just approachable to your kids so that they want to have kind of that relationship and bond with you from the get-go. I don't know how good the lighting is here. I'm switching up the position because I don't want to just keep filming in front of just a completely blank wall, but the lighting's quite bright, the sun's really coming through, so it might be a bit bright, but we'll see how we go. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this. If you do have any other maybe worries or situations that you've thought about, like, oh, how would I handle that, or how would I deal with that, if I haven't spoken about them in this video, please just leave them down below and I'll have a little look into it and maybe film a part 2 of this, or just kind of answer and like kind of ease your mind, because I want you guys to feel comfortable and confident going into the summer in terms of like situations you might come across, and some of these you might never have thought of and think, oh, I never even thought I'd maybe have to deal with that. So just an idea. But yeah, thank you for watching and I hope you enjoy. Okay, so the first situation I'm going to talk about is a homesick camper. Now this will completely depend on the age group of kids you have. I started with my girls when they were 7 years old. They were in freshman A and they'd never been to camp before. It was my first summer, it was their first summer. We started the whole process together, which I absolutely loved that we did that. Like I found that I got myself really settled really early on, because we did have that connection on based on the fact this was the first time we'd all been there. So I did have a lot of kids that were homesick. Like they're 7 years old. Some kids now that come to Tyler here are as young as 6. Now it's like, it's young, and kids are going to miss home. They're going to miss their families. They're going to miss just like aspects of home. It's a big change to go and spend 7 weeks at a sleepaway camp. Now again, this will also depend on the type of camp you're working at. Some camps are just day camps, or not as long as 7 weeks. My camp is a traditional 7-week sleepaway camp, so they're there for a long time. So I'm talking about in that kind of sense. Obviously this is only relatable really to my camp and what I've done. Yeah, we had a lot of kids that were homesick. Even last year, like my kids were a little bit older, you still get homesick. Like I get homesick at the age of 24. It's a completely normal and valid feeling to have, and I would always just kind of comfort my kids whenever they were feeling homesick. I'd always just kind of associate and put myself in their position, say, oh, like I really miss my family too, like my mum's really far away. Like try and ease that to let them know that you're going through the same thing. I found was really helpful, and the kids would then be like, oh, like yeah, you must miss your mum too. Like you would then have conversations like that, and that's what I kind of, like I say, loved about being able to just be open and approachable. Like a big thing is like making yourself known to the kids. They can come and talk to you about anything. They can make their feelings or worries or upsets just known to you, and you can help them through it. A lot of the time as well, the kids just wanted company when they were feeling homesick. Like a lot of them would wake up in the middle of the night and just really miss home, and then like lying in a bunk with like 15 other people is quite a scary thought for a 7-year-old. So like normally I'd get woken up in the middle of the night and they'd just ask me to go and like lie with them, or like just talk to them for a little bit, or we'd go and sit out on the porch and just kind of ease their minds and their worries about things, about missing home. And again, just simply reiterate the fact that like it's completely normal to feel like you miss home. Like no one's telling you that you can't miss home. Like I think a lot of people go in and say, oh well, why do you miss home? Like you're having the best time at camp, you're doing this. And yes, you can work that into a conversation, but definitely don't start it by kind of saying, oh well, you shouldn't feel like this because you've got all this going for you, which might be like the thing to say at the time. But really just try and associate with them and say, look, it's completely normal to miss home. Like I work with kids all the time now. I coach gymnastics and I have kids come in for an hour class and they're like, oh, I'm really homesick, I miss my mom, like, and the mom's sat outside. So you just got to put yourself in their shoes. This is a 7-year-old going away to camp and been away from their family for sometimes the first time, or even a 14-year-old been away from home is a big deal. Do you know what I mean? Like, you've just got to put yourself in their shoes. I think a big thing that I would always say as well is like, oh, well, when we wake up in the morning, let's write your mom a letter, or let's like speak to home, let's do something like this, like, let's get you excited about contacting home. And at my camp we have phone calls every week, so they're able to speak to their parents back home. And say if we had that on a Monday, and I'd be like, oh, well, we've got phone calls this week, like, that's really exciting to look forward to. Like, make them excited about things like that, and also take their mind off it. If, say, it's in the middle of the night and they're just feeling a little bit homesick and a bit down, take their mind off it, talk about different things, talk about their holidays they've got planned for the year, or if they're excited about going back to school, or just about what their favourite food is. Do you know what I mean? Like, talk about different things, try and get their mind off it. And it is normally the night time, you'll find, that is the tricky time for a lot of kids. During the day, obviously, they're kept so busy with activities and different things going on that it doesn't play on their mind quite as much. But it's such a valid feeling, and you guys will probably feel homesick as well. Like, whether you're an American going to a summer camp or whether you're an international flying from all over the world, like, you will probably feel homesick at some point, and it's completely normal. So just understand that that's what they're going through as well, and just kind of be that soothing person for them they can talk to, and they can just help them put their mind at ease. Let them know it's completely normal to feel like that, and just try and work through it with them. Okay, next situation I'm going to talk about is arguments in the bunk. Now, I don't think this is really something I've spoken about much. It's not something I've dealt with loads at camp. Now, as your kids get older, you will find they'll start to argue more. They'll get to that age where they'll just clash. It'll be the same as counsellors. It'll be the same where, like, you'll go and there'll be people that you clash with and you don't get on with, and it's the same for them. Like, sometimes, like, they'll spend like day in day out with each other, and like arguments do happen, and not everyone will get on. And again, I think in terms of arguments, it's just very much about calming the situation down straight away. Like, if there's a big argument going on, split whoever it is up, give them just a little minute to themselves, and then try and go in and talk to them. If ideally, if there's more than one counsellor there, like, try and have, say, like, one of you talk to one kid and one of you talk to the other, and then when you feel calm about the situation, then try and bring them back together and just discuss the situation. And I think a big thing that I always say to my girls is that you're at camp for 7 weeks. Like, do you want to look back on this summer and think the only part I remember of that night is me arguing with my best friend because this happened? And now arguments will happen, it's inevitable, they are going to argue, but again, just trying to be the calm person in the middle and just getting them to talk things through, as like opposed to shouting, or maybe like getting them to just be calm and like saying, well, why are you actually upset, like what has upset you, and get them to communicate that way. And you'll find that towards the end of the summer, I found my girls were doing that naturally without me needing to kind of mediate. Like, they were kind of just expressing their feelings and saying, look, well, this is how this made me feel, like, what can we do to work past this? And they actually got really mature with it by the end of the summer, and that's such a nice thing to see as well, how they've grown in terms of that. But yeah, arguments will happen. It's really hard, again, to say how you would handle arguments when it would be so different, like I say, for every kid. But yeah, just reiterating the fact that camp is going to fly by, and spending time arguing is the last thing you want to be doing. Like, you want to enjoy yourself with you want to enjoy your time with your friends and have the best summer, because they're going to get home and they're going to be like, oh, I just miss camp so much, and then spending those days arguing really just isn't worth it. I hope these blinds aren't really irritating, blowing away. I might close the door so the wind's not coming through. So yeah, a big thing as well actually with arguments is try not to take sides. I know that sometimes it can be quite easy if you can maybe see that someone is completely in the wrong or in the right, to just be like, oh, well, actually you need to apologize, this and this, because it makes that kid feel really quite unvalidated in how they feel the argument has been. So definitely don't kind of be like, well, actually you just need to apologize, unless obviously it's something really bad that they like, it's not kind of reciprocated. If someone's just done something straight out of the blue, then obviously that's different. But in terms of an argument where it's like two ways, definitely make sure both kids can like get their point across, and they can talk about what it is that has upset them, so you can kind of work through it that way. You will be a therapist for the summer, you will be like this person that the kids come and talk to all the time. Like, that is completely normal, but like, embrace that. Like, I love that I'm able to, like I say, help these kids through these problems and arguments that they have with each other, and just help them like get over them and not dwell on them is a big thing as well, because the one thing you don't want is for them to just sit on these problems and then not be enjoying their time at camp and not be enjoying what they're doing. So yeah, just try and calm the situation down, talk it through, and make sure they know this. Sometimes it's just the tiniest arguments, and it's not worth it at the end of the day. Just try and make them aware of that. Okay, next up I'm going to talk about how to keep the kids occupied, and this is something that I think, like, I've had a lot of people message me about, like, what's good things to, like, take for the bunk, or like games to play or things to do. Like, you've got to think those first few days are such funny days when the kids get there, because it's so overwhelming for them and for you, and they're coming back to camp, and some of you are going for the first time. It's really overwhelming, and having things to do in the bunk can be really good, because it just kind of eases any of that, like, awkwardness with first arrivals and stuff, and just having things to do straight away is really fun. Sorry if I'm being really active with my hands. I've realised I've been doing a lot of this the whole time. But yeah, card games are really good to have, or even just ideas of, I've done it again, sorry, I'm gonna like put my hands down. Even just ideas of like different conversation starters to have, or like games like playing like things like 2 truths and a lie, or we did a game in orientation. We all wrote 3 facts about ourselves, then folded the piece of paper up, put it in the middle, and then we picked one out and we had to guess who it was about. Little things like that are really nice. This kind of only really applies for the first few days of camp, and then when you've got rest hour, because after the first few days you're thrown into crazy camp life and you don't really have all that much downtime in the bunk unless it's rest hour, and unless it's kind of like just before you're going to bed. And a big thing what we would do, like with the kids before going to bed, like I would always go around and like sit on all the kids' beds, just ask them about their day, ask them what they'd done, what they'd found fun about the day, and then normally they'd always like kind of like have like flashlight time, or they'd just like get, honestly, talking about this, guys, genuinely that nearly just made me so emotional thinking about how excited I am to go back to camp. I don't know, I genuinely thought I was going to cry then. That made me so excited. But yeah, the kids will normally have like flashlight time where they can read a book, or they can like do some sort of activity, or whether they're like making bracelets and stuff, like they have this time before like lights out, and they can just, it's where all the lights are turned off but they've just got their flashlights on, so the room's dark in case there are people that do want to go to sleep. But yeah, people just listen to music sometimes, or just like whisper quietly to the person next to them, just like have little conversations and stuff. But yeah, keeping the kids occupied is kind of easy. Like, it is easy to do, and there's so many games and things that the kids will come with and bring, like different things. And obviously you're at camp, you're at the most incredible place. Even just going for a walk sometimes, like me and my girls, we went through a phase of like we'd go like rollerblading, or we go on social strolls around camp, and just things like that like are nice. Just get out the bunk and sometimes just get some fresh air, go for a walk, take them down to the lake, do something. Like, it's just a lot of fun to do. But yeah, having some ideas for different things you can do in the bunk the first few days is always nice. And then obviously in orientation, when you get to know who you've got in your bunk and in your division, like come up with ideas with each other. Like, it's always nice to do different games. Like, we have like tons of different evening activities as well, like different ideas for games and stuff. Maybe I'll do a video on different activities, like evening activities at camp, because like things like panic and treasure hunts and different things, like people will probably find that quite interesting, of different games, because I didn't realize how universal a lot of these are. Like, a lot of camps, especially in the area to mine, do still do similar things to this, so that could be quite interesting. Okay, next like tricky situation I'm going to talk about is getting the kids to sleep. Now, this can kind of be difficult for all ages. Like I've said, for the younger kids it can be just because they're missing home, they feel a bit homesick, they don't want to go to sleep. And then obviously the older kids, you find that you do have a little bit more of a challenge getting them to sleep, because they're a little bit older, they want to stay up talking to their friends, they want to talk about the day they've had and different things, and they're just so excited that like getting them to sleep is hard and can be quite a challenge. In terms of things like that, like last year, like obviously my first year, my kids were the youngest, so they were going to sleep at 9:30 every night. You will find with the youngest kids, they're just so exhausted after spending these long full days of doing different activities that their head hits the pillow and they're like fast asleep. They're out for the count. So what I found so different is that last year my girls were juniors, they were 11 and 12, and obviously they wanted to stay up later, their bedtime was later. Like every year we go, like the kids get older, their curfew's later and their bedtime's later. So I always find with getting the kids to sleep, like when they get into bed and the lights are out, they're always going to be excited, they're always going to be like chatting to each other and giggly. Like, that's just normal. Imagine how you were at a sleepover when you were 11 years old with your best friends. Like, I remember what I was like, and my mum used to come in and scream at me and my best friend like, go to sleep, come on, it's like 3 in the morning. So you can imagine how just excited you were, like how excited they are when you think back to how you were when you used to have sleepovers like that. So definitely just bear it in mind. Like, I always kind of would just let them have a little bit of a chat, a little bit of a giggle, as long as they weren't being really loud. And kind of like, we shared a cabin with a younger division, so the sophomores were one side and we were juniors the next side, so our curfew and the lights out were later. So obviously naturally they were going to be up a little bit later, the sophomores next door, because my girls didn't actually have to go to bed as early as they did. But as long as they weren't being crazy loud and like screaming and shouting and keeping the other bunk up, like I didn't mind them like really talking and chatting. And I think you've got to kind of, you've got to pick your battles a lot of the time. Like if the kids are just in bed whispering and it's not really affecting anyone else, and other kids in the bunk can still get to sleep, you just got to kind of let it slide sometimes, and they'll naturally fall asleep. But the more you kind of scream and shout like, right girls, go to sleep, like it's too late, you need to stop talking, like that just makes it worse in my experience. Like that just kind of makes them want to stay up and chat and giggle. So I find that the best thing that worked for me was just kind of like let them have their little chat time. Like once they were getting too loud, I just say, look girls, I do not mind you whispering and chatting to the person next to you at all, like that's fine, but when you're being too loud that other people can't sleep, that's when it's not fair. And then towards the end of the summer, we were like, obviously as the summer goes on, the kids are more and more exhausted. Like the first week is just pure excitement. Their bedtime is naturally so much later the first week because they're just so excited, they're back with all their camp friends again. As the weeks go on, they're starting to get exhausted. Like camp takes it out of you, the activities are like crazy, the days are long. So towards the last few weeks of camp, the kids were just like naturally falling asleep. They were just really, like I say, pass out as soon as their head hit the pillow. They were just fast asleep. And what we loved doing was like we'd get a speaker and we'd put like some really calming like spa music on, and oh my god, this was the best thing ever. So we'd put this on the bunk, like say as we've got back from canteen, and the kids would be getting ready for bed, brushing their teeth, like just chilling in their bunks, maybe reading a book or writing a letter, and I put this spa music on, and it was literally like, I can't even describe it. I'll have to try and link the video I used because it's like 4 hours long. And I just used to put this on, and naturally the kids would it just brought down the craziness a little bit in the bunk. And I find that massively with music. Music is such a huge factor in the bunk, that having calm, nice, quiet music really helps ease the craziness, and that worked wonders. Like the kids would literally be lazing in bed and then just naturally fall asleep, and that was a really, really good thing. So whether that's a tip or an idea, just see how the kids respond to it, see if they want it. Like we would kind of do spa, so we would get back from canteen and we'd have spa night, so we'd turn the lights off and we'd like maybe do like facials or paint nails or do different things like do hair and stuff, and have this music on. And the kids that were tired would naturally just take themselves to bed and fall asleep, and then the kids that were awake, they were just naturally a lot quieter, because it just kind of changed the whole vibe of just like being in the bunk, and it was just, oh, it was unreal. So yeah, just kind of see what works for your kids and do it that way. But I think a big thing is kind of, especially the first few days, like understand they are excited, they are going to be a little bit crazy, and you will be like, you'll get into the bunk, you're like, oh my god, these kids are never going to go to sleep, what am I going to do? And just know that it does get easier. Those first few days, they're just so excited. But yeah, just like I say, reiterating the fact that you have no problem with them like talking quietly with the person next to them, like that's okay. But when you're trying to wake, you're disrupting other people's sleep, that's when it's not fair. So yeah, just try the spa music as well and let me know if it works, because honestly that was an absolute dream for me as well. Like I would have the deepest sleeps when I'd go to sleep having this music on. Oh, it was amazing. Okay, next I'm going to talk about keeping the kids engaged and excited for activities. Now again, I don't think I've ever really spoken about this, and it's something that you'll find is quite a challenge when you're at camp. Like imagine you've got 12 and 13-year-old girls going to soccer and they just really dislike soccer, they don't want to do it. Getting them engaged and excited about going to that activity is a big thing in itself. Obviously when they get to that activity, it would be the soccer specialist goal and like job to keep the kids engaged and excited then, and they'll have hopefully set out like some really fun like activities and drills and different things for them to do to keep them active and moving. Like they're not too fussed about them like doing soccer drills and like shooting and passing and stuff. It's more about just them being out on the soccer field doing different games, like making it interesting and exciting for them. And that goes for all activities, do you know what I mean? Like we would have some kids come down to gymnastics that just didn't want to do gymnastics, and it was then just making it fun for them, be like, oh well, actually let's play this game, let's do this. And having those ideas if you're a specialist is really handy to have. But as a general, like it's so hard to get the kids out the bunk and have their like shoes on, have the right active wear on. If they're playing, like I say, soccer or tennis, they've got to have their tennis rackets, they've got to have that. So making them excited to want to go to those activities is really hard. Again, a big thing for me, and I know for a lot of the counsellors that I was with, was music. Like having music on in the bunk, or saying like, oh right, let's literally run down to tennis, or let's dance our way down. Like make it feel exciting, the journey to the activity itself. And like I say, music was amazing, because like music blasting on a speaker was just honestly a game changer, and it really made the kids want to get up and out. Like music, or even first thing in the morning, like waking the kids up, I would literally put old school Justin Bieber on. I'd literally blast like a baby in the bunk, and all the counsellors would be up dancing around. And some of the kids didn't like it, they were like, turn that off right now. But a lot of them, it got them up and out of bed. Or like having challenges, sorry, this has gone on to a completely different scenario, but having challenges to get them out of the bed, like saying like, oh, like first person up and out can be DJ for shower time, like different things. Give them like incentives to want to get up and out. Like it's not bribing, but kind of just like give them an incentive, like, oh, like, I really want to be the DJ, I want to control the music when everyone's like having shower hour, like, I want to get out of bed first. And that I found worked like really well as well, like incentivizing, not bribing. Don't be like, oh, I'll go and buy you candy from Walmart if you get out of bed. Like, that's definitely not what to say. But yeah, sorry, back on to getting into activities and keeping them engaged. Like, high energy is a big thing. If they can see that you're like moping and not wanting to go to golf, like, they're not going to want to go either. Like, they look up to you, and if you're excited and you're high energy, that's going to be a massive thing. That goes for camp in general. Like, when they see you're upbeat and wanting to go somewhere, they will want to do the same. Like, you forget how much of an impact you do have on these kids' lives, and they're going to look up to you massively. So wanting to be that person, like, oh, they're so excited about going rock climbing, I want to go with them. Do you know what I mean? Like, making it exciting. And that goes for like themed events as well, like colour war, invitationals, LAS. Like, sometimes it's long days. When we have invitational, the team gets through all the way to the final. That's a whole day of standing watching basketball games, and it's, for me, so exciting. But for 7, 8, 9-year-olds, like, it can be, oh, like, why am I still watching basketball? Like, I just want to go in the pool or go in the lake, like, do something else. So keeping high energy and making things exciting for them, like saying, oh, when it's half time, let's go and have a dance party in the middle of the court. Do you know what I mean? Like, different things like that. And it will come naturally, and orientation will teach you a lot of this. Don't be watching this video and like, I would have no idea to do any of this. Like, what are you talking about? Orientation is a big part of, you'll do loads of sessions, how to deal with like a homesick camper, or how to deal with a kid that doesn't want to eat or sleep, like different things. You will be trained how to do that. Orientation is meant for that. So this is just to give you an idea of kind of things to expect even pre-orientation. Okay, next one I'm going to talk about is making sure the kids are eating and staying hydrated. Now, some kids, this might be really tricky to get them to make sure they're eating properly and make sure they're drinking, staying hydrated. Like, it's such a big thing to obviously eat a lot and like eat well and drink a lot day-to-day life, even more so at camp, because they're so active. Like, when I think to what my kids' day would look like, say if they have golf first thing in the morning, then they've got swim, then they're going to gymnastics, they've got dance, then they're going boating. That's a busy day to then have been up from 7:45, have breakfast, clean the bunk, go and do your activities, come back, shower up, have dinner, go for evening activity, then go to canteen. The days are long, like, they're going to be tired, but making sure they know that it's really important to look after themselves, look after their bodies, make sure they're eating well and they're staying hydrated. Otherwise their energy is just going to be zero. Like, they're not going to have any energy whatsoever. So yeah, making sure they understand that, and like I say, not like bribing or forcing to be like, oh, well, if you eat this, you can have this. Do you know what I mean? Making them understand that for their just wellness, like physical, mental wellness, in terms of everything, it's really important that they're eating well at camp and all of that. And if you have got a kid that's struggling to eat, we do this a lot in orientation as well. We have a big training on, like, if you've got kids that just don't want to eat. Like, at Tyler Hill, we have so many food options. So if they're not wanting to have the meal that's like actually up for grabs on that day, be like, oh, well, let's go make a sandwich, let's go and do something else, let's try and eat something different. It's going to fuel their bodies, they're going to have so much more energy to do all these activities, and just make them aware that it's the best thing for them in terms of literally everything. Okay, last one I'm going to talk about is being a supportive role model in the kids' lives. Now, this isn't responding to a tricky situation at all. This is just kind of how you can be the best possible counsellor to them and for yourself, and kind of making sure like your camp experience in camp life can go the best way possible. You will realise very, very early on how much of a role model you are in these kids' lives and how much of an impact you're going to have. I've spoke to like the oldest girls on camp, and they remember their general counsellors and like counsellors in their bunk from their very first summer, and it makes you realise how much of an impact you do have. No matter what summer you're going into camp, no matter what job role you're doing, you're there and you have such an impact straight away, like literally from the get-go. And I think a big thing is like I said, just be approachable, make the kids know that they can come and talk to you about anything, like literally any issues they have, they can come and talk to you. And it's really hard to find like a balance between being the really fun counsellor and having to be the strict counsellor that makes sure the kids get everything done and they're like getting to activities, like they're safe, they're all of that. Like, it's hard to find the balance, but definitely do try and find the balance, because it's really unfair when there's one counsellor that's the really fun, like easygoing, that lets the kids get away with anything, and then you've got on the flip side the counsellor that's working so hard trying to make sure all the kids have got their sun cream on, they're making sure they're getting to activities on time, they're doing everything. And it's hard because the kids will naturally gravitate to having their favourite counsellor as the fun counsellor, and that's when it's really hard. So finding a balance between being that fun, energetic counsellor, but also like laying down the law and being like, well, actually, like, this is bedtime, this is when we've got to go and do this, like, this is how it works. And a big thing is setting those like boundaries from the get-go. If you go in and the kids walk all over you, like, it's really hard to regain any sort of control over the situation, and just kind of be like, it's hard to go back from there. So the first few days, literally make it obvious, like, this is how things are going to be. Like, we want you to have the best summer ever. Like, we want to have fun with you guys as well, but be respectful, make sure you're listening, make sure like we work together, do you know what I mean? So finding that balance is tricky, but definitely comes naturally when you get to camp and you're actually in the actual setting. It's really hard to, probably really hard for new staff to watch some of these videos and not understand fully how it's going to be until you get there. But when you do get there, like, it will settle kind of all nerves, and it will make a lot of sense when you get to camp. You're like, oh, okay, like, I get it. But yeah, being their support system and being the person, like I say, that they can turn to and they know they can confide in if they've got anything going on, and just don't force anything. Don't force relationships to happen. Like, they will come naturally, and it'll be a much more genuine relationship when it's just happened. And you might find that you don't like connect with the kids straight away. They'll probably go to their returning counsellors that they're familiar with and they know. So it might take a while for them to adjust to you and like to welcome you in, but it will happen. But like I say, don't force it, let them come to you and just go from there. But you will have such an impact on these lives, and it's such an amazing thing to be a part of. And if you end up going back for multiple years, or if this is just your only year, like, you will still have an impact regardless of how many times you're going to camp. But yeah, I think this video has actually been really, really long. I didn't expect to sit here and film for this long, but I'm glad that I have. It's been nice to talk about these things, like I said, when I haven't really done a video like this before. So yeah, I'm going to round it off here before it does get any longer. But yeah, if you have any other kind of tricky situations or things that are worrying you about not knowing how to handle throughout the summer, please leave them down below and I'll try and help you out and give you some ideas and some tips and different things like that. But yeah, thank you for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.